So, at one extreme, then we have the sacred individual, the unique personal ego, separate from both nature and God, defined as such by society, which, almost in the same breath, commands him to be free and commands him to conform. At one extreme is the coolie, the cog in the industrial collectivist machine, or the mere hand, as the factory worker as all it called, and the believer of the personal ego in a natural setting endowment. Though all men distinct from a social convention from the lot for a coolie is bleak indeed. As for one sees him as represented and frustrated in person, though his own society may never have defined him as such. However, there's a third possibility. The individual may be understood neither as an isolated person nor as an expendable humanoid working machine. He may be seen instead as one particular focal point in which a focal point is in the whole universe expands itself, as an incarnation of Vishnu, the Godhead, or whatever one may choose to call it IT. This view retains, indeed, amplifies our apprehension of the individual in the same way as the sacred path of the lily. At the same time, it dissolves paradox, personal ego, which it has to be in form and attain the prescience unique as a person, priceless, perpetual anxiety for one's survival, the hallucination of separateness, preventing us from seeing that should be cherished misery. We do not realize that our so-called love and concern for the individualist is simply the other face of our own fear of death or rejection. In this exaggerated value of separate identity, the personal ego is sawing off the branch on which it's sitting, and then getting more and more anxious about the coming crash. Let it be clear, furthermore, that the ego function is no way essential to the individual. To the total human organism, it is fulfilling and expressing its individuality. For every individual is a unique manifestation of the whole, as a branch is a particular outreaching of the tree trunk. To manifest individuality, every branch must have a sensitive connection with the tree, just as our independently moving and differentiated fingers must have a sensitive connection with the whole body. The point, which can hardly be repeated too often, is that the differentiation is not separation. The head and the feet are different but not separate, and though man is not connected to the universe by exactly the same physical relation as branch to tree or feet to head, he is nonetheless connected and by physical relations or fascinated complexities. The death of the individual is not disconnected but simply a withdrawal. The corpse is like a footprint or an echo, 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 the dissolving trace of something which the self has ceased to do. If then the differentiation of individuals is of great value to the society as a principle of variety and spice of life, this value is not going to be enhanced by a self-contradictory definition of individuality. Our society, that is, we ourselves, all of us, are identifying and defining the individual with a double-blind mind, commanding him to be free and separate from the world, which is not, for otherwise the command would not work. Under the circumstances, it works only to the sense of implementing an illusion of separateness. Just as the commands of a hypertonic hypnotist can create illusions, this bamboozled and into insisting on fulfilling your unique function in the world. It's exhausting and frustrating in the efforts to accomplish self-contradictory goals. Because he is now so largely defined by a separate person caught up in the mindless and alien universe, his principal task is to get one up the universe and conquer in its name. This is palpably absurd to since never achieved by a natural individual, taught to live and work for some future in which the impossible will at least happens. It not is least for his children, we are thus breeding a type of human being, Inga, present that is, or really, yes. For unless one is able to live fully in the present, the future is a hoax. There is no point whatever in making plans for a future which you all will never be able to enjoy. When your plans mature, you will shall be living for some other future beyond. You will never, never be able to sit back with full contentment and say, now I've arrived. Your entire education has deprived you of this capacity because it was preparing you for the future instead of showing you how to be alive now. In other words, you have been hypnotized or conditioned by an educational processing system arranged in grades or steps, supposedly leading to some ultimate success. First, nursery school or kindergarten, then the high grades of forms of the elementary school you went to, preparing you for the great moment of secondary school thought. But the more steps up and up the ladder, the more steps, coveted steps up the university ladder pyramid scheme. Here you are more clever, you can stay or identify the indefinite by going into the great and becoming a permanent student of that galaxy. Otherwise, you are headed step by step for the grand outside world for the family raising, business, and profession. Yet graduation day is a very temporary fulfillment, for with you are the first sale promoting agents. Back in the day, it was the old system being urged to make the quota. And if you'll give it a higher quota, so will be the progress of the ladder to the sales manager, vice president, and the President of the United States. The insurance of the investment people have been interesting for you to plan the retirement. That really ultimate goal of being able to sit back, enjoy your fruits and your labors. But when the day comes, your anxiousness and exertions will have left you with a weak heart, false teeth, prostate trouble, sexual impotence, fuzzy eyesight, and a vile digestion. All of this may have been wonderful at some stage of your life, but you have been able to play this game fair and square, finding your work as fascinating as poker, chess, or flashing your tits. But most of us are divided to the work time consisting largely of tasks divided into groups, work time and playtime. The work consisting largely of the day because a simile uninteresting for the Pete's. And workers' sake, the monkey money, and money is supposed to get us what we really want, and hours of our leisure and play. In the United States, even poor people have lots of money compared with the wretched and skinny millions of India, Africa, and Vietnam. Cha! Woo! While our middle and upper classes, or should we say income groups, are as prosperous and priceless as the princes yet by at large. They have been but slight tasting for pleasures. Money alone cannot buy pleasure, though it can help, for enjoyment is an art, and an art is a skill, lasting forever. Little talent and little energy. I have lived close to the harbor people, packed with sailing boats and luxurious cruisers, which are seldomly used here because of the seamanship. It's difficult, though rewarding, at which the owners have no time to practice. They bought the boats either as status symbols or as toys, but on discovering that they were not toys as advertised, they lost all interest. The same is true of the entire and astounding abundance of pleasure goods that we buy. Foodstuffs are plurit but few know how to cook. Building materials abound in both quantity and variety, yet most homes look as if they had been made for someone who had heard of a house but never seen one. Silks, linens, woods, and cottons are available in colors and patterns galore, and yet most men dress like divinity, students, or undertakers, while women and slaves to the fashion game with its basic rule I have confronted sooner than the sober you. The market for artists and sculptors has thrived, and never before in history but the paintings look as if they were made excrement, and scrapping the mangled typewriters or cherished lumbers for the burned down outer houses. We have untold stacks of recorded music from every age and culture, but most superb means of playing it. But who actually listens? Maybe a few pot smokers. This is perhaps a Henry Millerish exaggeration. Nevertheless, it strikes me more and more that America's reputation for materialism is unfounded. That is, if a materialist is a person who thoroughly enjoys the physical world and loves material things, is in a sense a superb being. When it comes to the construction of a jet aircraft, but decorating the inside of those magnificent monsters for the comfort of passengers is nothing but flippery. High-heeled, narrow-hipped doll-type girls serving imitation formed over materials. For our pleasures are not material pleasures, but symbols of pleasure, attracted to the inferior in content. The explanation is simple. Most of the products are being made by Hebot and making them, whether as owners or workers. Their aim is the enterprise and not the product but money, and therefore every thick is used by cut and cost production and hoodwork. By coloring and packaging chicanery into the belief that the product is well and truly made. The only exception are the products which simply must be excellent for reasons of safety, high cost of purchase, aircraft, computers, space rockets, scientific instruments, and so forth. But the whole scheme is a vicious circle, for when you have made the money, what will you buy with it? Other pretensions, fakes made by other money mad manufacturers. The few real luxuries on the market are imports from bacteria backward countries, where peasants and craftsmen still take pride in their work. For example, the state of Oaxaca in Mexico produces some of the finest blankets in the world, and American buyers have been trying to import these products. With the filling of the orders day by day, relatively few craftsmen were weaving them on time to fill the order, and they've been trying to import. So the only solution would be to train hundreds of new, but Oaxaca is just getting television and has for some time had public education. So, what upcoming young producers want to collaborate with the Oaxacans? The poets, sages have indeed burned Palo Santo. They've been saying for centuries that the success in this world is vanity. Fair. The worldly hope. Men sit in their hats upon their ashes, or as we might put it in a more up to date idiom, just when our mouth is watering for the ultimate goal and goodie. It seems to be cut out of mixtures of plant or Paris pit with plastic glue. Comes in any flavor. I have thought of putting this on the market as a universal substance, a prima materia, for making anything and everything houses, furniture, flowers, bread. They use it already in apples and even people. The world, as they are saying, is a mirage. Everything is forever falling apart, and there's no way to fix it. And more strenuously, the grasping to the airy nothingness of their nostrils. Technological civilizations arising and falling, man's most desperate efforts to beat the game, to understand, control, and fix the will of the wisp, called life. And it may vary, dissolve, and it's in its dream stage. But in this, it's more to be filled out in a technical power way by the hands of a new kind of man. In times past, recognition of the impermanence of the world usually led to withdrawal, and one hand ascetics, monks, and hermits trying to exercise their desires as to regard the world with benign resignation, or to draw back and back and back into the depths of each and every community, unmanifest as a state of eternal serenity. On the other hand, others felt that the world was a state of probation, where material goods were to be used in a spirit of stewardship, loans from the Almighty, and they were the main work of life in loving devotion to God as a man. Yet both these responses are based on the initial supposition, individual and separate in its ego, because this supposition is a soup. Well delivered and self defeating just because it's a hoax from the beginning. Some standing aside from it as it were quite other than the other half himself, and then trying to grasp it without birth and death, without the perpetual transmutation of all forms of life.